welcome back to the podcast. We are officially in the home stretch of A Court of Wings and Ruin, and somehow we're already at the second to last episode of our deep dive. We're not emotionally prepared at all, and honestly, we don't think the cauldron is either. Then again, the cauldron has made some pretty questionable decisions at this point, so maybe we shouldn't be taking life advice from an ancient magical soup pot. Today, we're diving back into the chaos as the story races toward its conclusion. There are impossible choices, emotional reunions, and enough twists to keep us guessing everyone's motives. So grab your favorite drink, tighten your Illyrian leathers, and join us as we head back to Prythian for one more step towards our epic finale. Let's get into it. Okay, so
Yay.
today we are discussing chapters 66 through 73. So we have already started a war. We have seen 2 official battles in the war. We're going to see more battles and get into the big one, the big, massive final battle for the book series. We are going to see some familiar faces pop back up that we didn't know where they went or what they were doing for the last 2.5 books. They are finally back. Surprise, major surprise for some of them. But a lot of fun stuff coming in these set of chapters. At the end of the last set of chapters, Feyre and Asriel went and rescued Elaine from Hybern's camp. They did actually rescue a human woman as well. Her name is Briar. We're going to see her a little bit more, but not a whole lot after the rescue. What else? And we get some information on the Morrigan. Some information that's been hinted at in the last couple of books, but officially it is going to be confirmed for us in this set of chapters. Asriel is hurt. He was hurt helping rescue Elaine. He's not hurt terribly. He can still fight to an extent, but he can't fly and fight at the same time. Cassian was also hurt in the last battle, but he is also mostly healed over the last couple of days. And Jurian and Tamlin helped Feyre, Asriel, and Elaine and Briar escape from Hybern. So we have it officially confirmed that Tamlin was kind of working both sides. He was still an ally for Prythian fighting against Hybern, but still with Hybern so that he could gain some of their secrets. So we're not quite sure where he is until the end of this set of chapters. We'll find out. But until that point, Feyre has no idea where he went to after he winnowed out of the camp from Hybern. So they're moving armies around. Callius's army joins them the following afternoon. Feyre is thinking to herself about Tamlin and how he assisted, and she's not quite sure how to feel about it because they thought he was a traitor, and then he said he wasn't at the High Lords meeting, and then he went back to Hybern, so they thought he was again, and now he supposedly isn't. So no one has any idea what to think about Tamlin at this point. And I think it's interesting because Feyre points out that the wind he sent to her to help her fly is not a power she's ever seen from him. So it makes you wonder if he just didn't use his powers very much when Feyre was with him, or what? Like, was he trying to hide his powers from her? I don't know, but I feel like there are just so many sides to Tamlin that we never see, that Feyre never sees, so she can't get a good picture of him because we don't see all of those sides to him.
What I thought was interesting with his wind, though, is that she mentioned the scent, the spring scent. I think it was lilac that she mentioned with it, and the warmth, like the spring warmth. We only saw her with Tamlin really going through those hard times trying to sort out his emotions. And I'm not defending him in any means, but if we were to play devil's advocate for a bit, I wonder if maybe it's something that comes out of his goodness. You know how sometimes you hear with magic, good versus evil, maybe that's his lighter side, his brighter side. And
Right.
so maybe we haven't seen it because he was actually doing it out of the goodness of his own heart as opposed to for a
Could be.
manipulative purpose. He was helping her just to help her to cover
Right.
jury and not, something I had thought on.
Yeah, and Feyre mentions at the beginning of this chapter too that Tamlin's actions had actually covered Jurian's betrayal, and it makes me wonder: did Tamlin know Jurian was also fighting for Prythian, or did he just save Feyre, and because he did, it just happened to have covered Jurian's betrayal as well. Just makes me wonder, because just the way that it went down, it gives me the feeling that Tamlin didn't know about Jurian, and
See
possibly
that?
vice versa, because Jurian is the one who tells us that Tamlin ran right back to Hybern after the High Lord meeting. So I don't think that they know the other one is actually siding with Prythian. But that's just my guess. Who knows for sure? They have discovered Hybern is in the human realm, very close to Feyre's estate, the estate that they moved into when Feyre went to Prythian. They are waiting for some of the rest of the armies to come join them. Callias and his army arrive the next day, so they're getting that army set up. And I love that Feyre points out all of the different beasts that actually work in the army for the Winter Court, because it's the only court that seemed to have a large number of animals, sentient animals that are working in the army. And one of them is large white, like polar bears that are fighting for them. And then also little white foxes are scuttling between the camps, acting as little messengers with messages strapped to them in little embroidered vests. So we're going to see in Crescent City that we get another animal, which is the messenger around the city. So I love that we have little foxes in this one. Feyre spots Mor walking with Vivian, and a stunningly beautiful young woman who looked like either Vivian's twin or sister. Vivian is smiling super bright. Mor was a little bit more subdued than usual, and then the three women kind of part, and that's when Feyre sees Briar, the human girl that she had also helped rescue from Hybern, because Briar is actually going to stay with the Winter Court, and we'll find out why in a minute. But as Feyre is watching Mor and Vivian and whoever this third woman is, Vivian starts to lead Briar away, and Mor and the other woman, possibly Vivian's sister, are still standing there together. Mor says something to the stranger that makes her smile, kind of subdued, but smile nonetheless. It's restrained. And then a male Fey soldier walks past, making a teasing remark, and the female drops her smile. But Mor is watching the female's face very carefully and swiftly looks away when the female turns back to her, claps Mor on the shoulder, and then strodes off after Vivian and Briar. So, no idea who this woman is. We have zero mention of her in the past books, but it makes me wonder, one, who this woman is, if she is related to Vivian or not. But the way Mor is watching her, it just makes me wonder if there's something going on between her and Mor, or could become something, which we're going to find out in a little bit. Mor's preferences are actually for females and not males. So that's why it just makes me wonder, because this is the only interactions Feyre has seen where Mor pays attention to another female. So just because it happens around this other topic with Mor, it just makes me wonder if there might be something more with this female, but who knows? So then Mor comes over to Feyre and tells Feyre that Briar is going to stay with the Winter Court because Mor thought that the Illyrian soldiers might be a little too much for Briar after everything that she dealt with in Hybern with their army. And Feyre's like, well, why is the Winter Court army any better? And Mor's response is because they have fuzzy animals, which is such a girl response. Yes, we will definitely go in that one because it has fuzzy animals. Mor and Feyre then walk off so that they can have a conversation alone. And this is a conversation that Feyre realizes Mor does not want anyone to hear. No one. So that's why they walk off, just the two of them. This is where we find out a little bit more about Mor and her preferences and the reason why she hasn't actually taken the next step with Asriel. So it all comes down to Mor likes both males and females, but she feels like she's more of a connection with females than she does with males, and that she doesn't think she could ever love Asriel in the same way that he loves her, and she doesn't even want to try it out because she thinks even just once, Asriel will fall in love with her even more. He will think that is it. He has finally found the right person. Whereas with Mor, she thinks that even if they tried it, she still wouldn't be able to, the connection wouldn't be as good as it could be. So she would feel like she was settling with Asriel, which is not something she wishes on herself or even on Asriel, because she does love him, but it's more of a brotherly love. And so that's why she slept with Helion, because she wanted to kind of push Asriel away, because Asriel had shown emotions towards her. But also because she does enjoy spending time with males when she wants to, but she never goes into a deeper relationship with males. And that the only reason she slept with Cassian is because of everything that was happening with her being betrothed or sold to Eris. And she found Cassian was a way to get out of that, a way to be free. And she knew if she slept with Asriel, then he would think she was accepting of his love, which she isn't. And that Mor attempted to tell Asriel about it at one point, but he kind of cuts her off and starts telling Mor that he loves her and she can't handle it, so she walks away. And so Asriel at that point assumes that Mor isn't interested or that he isn't good enough. And since then, she hasn't had the courage to tell him, tell Cassian, tell Rhys. She hasn't told anybody what her preferences are, but she does mention that she goes to Rita's, which is the dancing hall that has been mentioned a couple of times in the second book. That Mor goes there often because Rita, who owns it, also has different preferences, and that is actually a place where a lot of people go because it's not as strict, it's a little bit more open. They don't care who you love, or you're open to loving whoever you want in that kind of place. The main reason Mor doesn't want anyone to know is because she doesn't want her family and the Court of Nightmares to find out and then use it against her or demean her because of it. We also find out that Mor had a relationship with one of the human queens in the war 500 years ago, and that queen actually had multiple children, and the golden queen, the lioness queen that we saw die in the end of book 2, that is one of the descendants of the human queen that Mor loved. So that is why Mor wanted to go see if any of the human queens looked like one of the human queens that she knew from 500 years ago. She does mention that during the war, she was away from the Court of Nightmares enough that she felt she could get into a relationship because no one who knew her very well was around her. No one was paying attention to her actions. So she was able to have that relationship with the human queen. But then when the wall went up and the humans went on their side and the Fae had to stay on their side, she had decided that they were going to be separated because the war was over. So she let the human queen go back to her territory, Mor stayed in hers. And then she realized that it was more than just a fling, that she actually wanted a relationship, even if it meant they'd only have 60 more years together. She still wanted to try to have a relationship with her. And the day she realized that, the day the wall went up. Mor then spends the next 3 years trying to find a hole in the wall so that she can go to see the human queen to see if she is interested in a relationship. And by the time she finds a hole and goes, the human queen has actually married, has a little girl, and another child along the way. And Mor says that she did have 5 children, and she died an old woman safe in her bed. And that's when we find out that her spirit lived on in her descendant, the Golden Queen. Mor talks about she's had a few lovers over the past years. Females were always in secret. And she thinks that that's what wore the relationship down, pulled them apart, because she had to keep it a secret. And in the end, it was the other female who usually ended it because Mor wasn't able to be open about it, which I think is super interesting that this is how Mor sees herself, because we talked about it a couple episodes ago when Feyre is talking to Cassian about Nesda. She says Nesda will never love as freely as Mor. And we're finding out now that Mor doesn't actually love as freely as we think because she is not able to. Feyre, of course, tells her, well, I will support you. I won't tell anyone, including Rhysand, of what you said. But when you come to terms with it and you're ready to tell the world, I'll be here to support you. And I guarantee all of our friends and family will support you as well. Okay, so tell me this. So Feyre is trying to go see Amren after she talks to Mor. She's going to see Amren because they need to go retrieve Bryaxis, and she wants Amren's presence for her peace of mind, because Bryaxis is big, scary, fearful being. So Amryn has put wards up around her tent because she doesn't want anybody to come in. Not even Varian is allowed to come in, not even Rhys. So tell me how Feyre can break down or break through the wards of the King of Hybern multiple times, and yet she can't break through the wards that Amryn has up. How is that possible? How is Amryn that powerful and we don't get her helping out in anything up until this point? Yeah, fishy. It's fishy. Amryn is in her tent and she has locked herself in there because she is looking through the Book of Breathings, trying to find that additional spell that the Suriel told Feyre about, that if she combined 2 pages in the book, that she'd be able to find the spell she's looking for. Feyre assumes the spell is to nullify the cauldron. We don't know for sure. We're going to find out next episode what that spell is really for. We'll get to that though. Instead of dealing with Amryn because she can't get through the wards, Feyre then goes back to her war tent and realizes everybody's in her war tent because Hybern has moved its army. It is on the move from the west side of the human realm, moving east towards the eastern side and the coastline. The coastline on the eastern side of the continent. There is lots of discussion as to why they are doing this. Is this Hybern style? Someone says that it is, someone says that it isn't. The King of Hybern is postponing or delaying the conflict, delaying the initial war, and they can't figure out why. What is driving him to do this? And Feyre and Cassian and her sisters are kind of piecing it together. He still doesn't have the missing piece for the cauldron. Nesta still has that. He was never able to take Nesta to get that power back. So Rhys asks Cassian, there is a river that separates all of the Prythian armies and Hybern's army in the human realm. Cassian says to cross that river be very time consuming and dangerous. It's too wide to walk or swim across, so they would have to either construct a bridge or construct boats to be able to get the army to the other side, or they'd have to go all the way around it, which would mean they'd have to essentially go to the eastern side of the continent to get around. So they have come to the conclusion that Hybern is also doing this to spite the Archeron sisters, because Hybern can now march from the western coast to the eastern coast of the human realm, wipe all the humans off of the earth in their little section at the bottom of Prythian, and the Prythian army can't get to them because of this river in between. The King of Hybern is counting on Prythian and the High Lords putting the Archeron sisters above the rest of Prythian, that the Archeron sisters have enough sway that they will sway them to save the humans and therefore tire their army out, so that when they do finally get to that battlefield with all of Hybern's army, that they'll just be wiped out because they'll be too tired from saving all the humans. And I think it's funny because Helion says, I'd say he's assuming quite a bit about how much we care for humans. And Tarquin's like, wait, so then we're not going? And Rhys is like, oh, of course we're going. But it has nothing to do with my mate or her sisters. The wall is down. It is gone. It is a new world, and we must decide how we are to end this old one and begin anew. We must decide if we will begin it by allowing those who cannot defend themselves to be slaughtered, if that is the sort of people we are. Not individual courts, but we as a Fae people. Do we let the humans stand alone? And Helion's response is, oh, okay, so then we'll just all die together. Instead of just letting the humans die, we'll just die together. So they all agree they are going to go and try and save as many humans as they can. Feyre comes up with the idea that anyone who can winnow is going to winnow tonight. So under the cover of darkness, they're going to winnow to as many human houses and towns as they can, grab the humans, and bring them to Adriata in the summer court. They were once to bring them all the way up to Valaris, but Rhys is like, no, that is way too far to try and travel. We will lose all of our power and energy very quickly trying to do that. So that's when Tarquin says, bring them to Adriata. He says he's going to send Cressida back and she's going to oversee them. And Callia says, so what, we're going to waste all of our time and energy winnowing humans? And Feyre says, it is no waste. One life may change the world. Where would you all be if someone had deemed saving my life to be a waste of time? And then she points to Rhys, because he's the one who made sure she stayed alive through Under the Mountain. And she says, if he had deemed saving my life under the mountain as a waste of time, y'all would still be under the mountain if it wasn't for her and Rhys. What it boils down to. She says, even if it's only 20 families or 10, they're not a waste, not to me and not to you. And then Amren finally comes in from her tent and says, I hope y'all voted to face Hybern in battle because we're going to need a distraction. So Feyre and Nessa, Elaine, and Amren are going to need to get to the cauldron for this new spell that Amren has found. And Tarquin asks, okay, great, so you found another way to stop the cauldron. Amren says, even better, I found a way to stop his entire army. So that night, they winnow as many people as they can. I think it's funny because Feyre mentions at first they went to the families' homes and explained everything, but then too many humans started just freaking out when they first saw them. So Rhys just starts grabbing humans and winnowing them to Adriana, like, oh, whatever, Cressida will deal with them when we get there. But they're at least safe. So
That was
all
my
night,
favorite line in that section.
right?
The Rhys didn't give him a chance after that. Just like, no nonsense, let's go. Like, you're done.
Right? Because, I mean, they don't have time to explain it all, try and coax the humans into going. Yeah, no, let's just give me your hand. Let's go. So all night, every High Lord and any commander or noble who had the gift and the strength helps to winnow people. And by the end of the night, because at this point they've seen how big the Hybern army is, how drained they now are, that all of them knew that they most likely were not going to be walking off the battlefield the next day, that it was going to take all of them and everything that they had to take down the Hybern army that they've seen so far, and that they were all willing to do it and they were not afraid. So Feyre says, I'm going to bring Bryaxis, and if they're not afraid to do whatever they need to for this war, then I need to be able to do that as well. And that's when she decides I'm going to go and try and get the Ouroboros so that I can get the bone carver as well. If it was what I had to give my own cost to buy them any sliver of survival, I would gladly pay it. She winnows with the very last bit of her power to the Night Court to get the Ouroboros. It is sitting at the top of kind of like a tower, but it's really just a room in the mountain since the Night Court is under the mountain. And I love the description of the Ouroboros. So it is a massive round disc, as tall as Feyre is, even taller. And the metal around it had been fashioned after a massive serpent, the mirror held within its coils as it devoured its own tail. So it is a continuous circle where the snake's head is eating its tail. So there is no official end. And she says it is ending and beginning. And at this point, she has come up into the room. It is across the room from her. There's holes in the walls, kind of like windows. So there's a little bit of snow in here because this is a snowy area in the Night Court. The mirror itself was black as night, yet wholly clear. And she comes up to it and stops a few feet away, but she doesn't touch it. Probably a good thing, because we know what happens when you touch mirrors. Aelin and Manon found out that if you touch mirrors, then you're going to go into them and see memories and end up transported into a different area. Feyre mentions that the surface of the Ouroboros was like a gray, calm sea, undisturbed and sleeping. And then she notices movement behind her. So she turns around because there is a beast that's kind of climbing down the wall. And so she turns around to kill it and finds out that there's nothing there. And when she turns back around to face the mirror, the beast is actually sitting where she was, and she realizes that this is a visual manifestation of herself. So it is a massive beast of claws and scales and fur and shredding teeth. Its enormous paws were near silent on the floor. The fur on them a blend of black and gold. Down its back has a ridge of dark scales and large shining eyes that were a blue gray. So it does have her eyes. And she realizes this is her reflection. This is what lurks beneath her skin. The knife she's holding, because she was trying to kill the creature when she thought it was behind her, falls to the ground as she actually looks into the mirror. So then the scene switches and she's actually at the bone carver's in the prison in his cell, giving him the mirror. And we find out as she's talking to him, she says words were still foreign and strange things, that this body that I had returned to, it was strange, because she doesn't actually go into the mirror physically, but kind of mentally she does, so that she can see all parts of herself. And so she's talking about coming back into her own body, her consciousness being, her awareness being back in her own mind, and coming away from that experience is just really hard to kind of settle back in. Bone Carver says he would be happy to fight for her. And Feyre kind of finds out that he didn't actually need the mirror, but he needed to know that she could overcome the mirror. She could look inside and that she was worthy enough for him to fight. And he says, I wanted to see if you were worth helping. It's a rare person to face who they truly are and not run from it, not be broken by it. That's what the Ouroboros shows you. So it shows all who look into it, who they are, every despicable and unholy inch. Some gaze upon it and don't realize that the horror they're seeing is them, even as the terror drives them mad. Some swagger in and are shattered by the small, sorry creature they find instead. But you are rare indeed. And Feyre's going to tell us a little bit later on kind of what she felt, of what happened while she was in there, that she just kind of deteriorated on the floor while looking, vomiting, crying, just completely a mess because of what she sees, but in the end, she does accept every part of herself. And at that point, she is able to claim the Ouroboros mirror. So she gets the bone carver ready to go, and we are back at the army camp. Hybern has raised everything from the spring court down to the few miles before the sea, including Feyre's village. Thankfully, they had gone there the night before and gotten most of the people out. She says even those, who didn't want to go, there was nothing they could do about them. But that Hybern had specifically taken out what few animals were left, the livestock, as well as burned most of their house down. Nessa and Feyre do climb into one of the caravan's covered wagons to change them into Illyrian leathers. Elaine isn't able to change into pants. She struggles with how tight the pants are. So Vivian actually comes up and offers winter court fashion, which is pants, but it has a long coat over top, so it covers the waist area. So Elaine feels a lot better. Cassian goes to hand Elaine a knife, and she goes white as death at the sight. So instead, Azriel comes limping over, pushes Cassian out of the way, and actually extends Truth Teller to Elaine. He says because he's so hurt, he's not actually able to fight with the armies, which we talked about a little bit at the beginning of the episode. So he's not supposed to fight in the battle. So he says, I won't be using it today, so I want you to. And Elaine's eyes widen at the obsidian hilted blade. I'm putting a lot of emphasis on what this blade looks like. Obsidian hilted blade in Azriel's scarred hand, the runes on the dark scabbard. So there are runes on the scabbard of this blade. And the blade isn't like a steel, silver. It is obsidian. So it is super black. Azriel says, it has never failed me once. Some people say it is magic and will always strike true. It will serve you well. So Elaine isn't quite sure she wants to use it, but she does take it anyway. And Cassian is gawking at Azriel, and Feyre is just kind of wondering, I wonder how often Azriel has actually lent the blade out to anyone. And Rhys, in her mind, says, never. He has never let any other person touch that knife. Where'd it come from, Azriel? Why is no one else allowed to touch it? We want to know these things. And Feyre says, I saw the painting in my mind, the lovely fawn, blooming spring, vibrant behind her, standing before death. Shadows and terrors looking over his shoulder. So standing before death, I just love the way Feyre words things sometimes, because I feel like she is hinting at things she doesn't actually know that we're going to get to later on in books. But I think it's interesting that she describes Azriel as dead. Amren is also in Illyrian leathers. And Feyre says they were so small, they must have been built for a child. And Rhys, in her mind, says they were, but don't tell. Moore is also decked out in dark armor because she's going to be fighting with Vivian in the army. And then Feyre kind of realizes that everyone, their family, their inner circle, has kind of gathered this one last time because they still have some traveling to do. But as soon as they're done traveling, they will be at the battlefield that Hybern has chosen, and they are presumably going straight into battle with Hybern. So this is the last chance they're all going to be together before that fight. So they do kind of all end up together, circled around in this little area. So Rhys says, do you want the inspiring talk or the bleak one? And Amren says, we want the real one. So he does go into a nice little speech about, I believe everything happens for a reason, whether it's decided by the mother or the cauldron or some sort of tapestry of fate. I don't know. I don't really care, but I am grateful for it, whatever it is. Grateful that it brought you all into my life. So I think it's interesting the way he words that. I believe everything happens for a reason because we get some similar wording in Throne of Glass, talking about how everything kind of comes full circle and that specific things happen so that Aelin can get to other things down the road. So it makes me wonder if there's some god piece moving like we got in Throne of Glass to get them to this point. We don't know for him. He goes on to say, I'm very grateful to have you all in my life. And then he kind of talks through each one of them. If I hadn't met Cassian, an Illyrian warrior in training, I would not have known the true depths of strength, resilience, honor, and loyalty. And then to Azriel, if I had not met a shadow singer, I would not have known that it is the family you make, not the one you were born into, that matters. I would not have known what it is to truly hope, even when the world tells it to despair. And then Rhys looks at Moore, and she is just like bawling, and she starts crying even more when he looks at her and says, if I had not met my cousin, I would never have learned that light can be found even in the darkest of hell, that kindness can thrive even amongst cruelty. And then he turns to Amren and says, if I had not met a tiny monster who hoards jewels more fiercely than a fire drake, my own power would have consumed me long ago. And then he turns to Feyre and if I had not met my mate, and then he says down the bond instead of out loud, I would have waited 500 more years for you, 1,000. And if this was all the time we were allowed to have, the wait was worth it. Which at this point, reading the book, like I'm in tears because Rhysand. We just love Rhysand. And then he turns back to everybody and says, I believe everything happened exactly the way it had to, so I could find Feyre. Then he turns to her sisters and says, we have not known each other for very long, but I have to believe that you were brought here into our family for a reason too, and that maybe today we'll find out why. Which, yes, foreshadowing, right? Most definitely.
You had to get me all teary though, really.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
It
the
might
sappy
be the
crap
only
is getting to
time,
me lately.
right? That should be the only time this episode, but next episode, we're all going to be in tears. Don't worry. We're all going to be there. So then they all link hands so that they're all bound together. Rhys says, we will walk onto the battlefield and only accept death when it comes to haul us away to the other world. So we finally have mention of what happens after death in this world, in this realm. We have not gotten it before. We even talked about it a couple of times in previous episodes, that we don't know if there's a heaven or a hell. Occasionally, they kind of swear to hell, but there's no mention of whether or not there is actually a hell. But now we get confirmation that there is an other world, that death is going to drag you to the other world. We don't know if it's a good or a bad place. We just know there is one. Interesting. We will fight for life, for survival, for our futures. If it is decided by that tapestry of fate or the cauldron or the mother that we do not walk off that field today, the great joy of my life and honor of my life has been to know you, to call you my family. And I am grateful more than I can possibly say that I was given this time with you. And Amren is the one who says, we are grateful as well, more than you know. And Rhys says, then let's go make Hybern very ungrateful to have known us. So they make it to the battlefield, and the king of Hybern has stationed himself or a mile or so in from the coastline. So when the Prythian army comes in, they're actually in between the coast and Hybern. They're going to be fighting an uphill battle to Hybern. That Hybern has kind of stationed themselves along this cliff with the king and the cauldron kind of at its top, and then its commanders coming down and its army below in this ravine. And that even the little bit of like the area in between the coast and the cliffs where Hybern's commanders are, it still slopes up towards Hybern. So it's going to be a complete uphill battle for the Prythian army. So it's most likely, well, not most likely, they're going to lose with the way things currently are. Cassian even goes so far as to say he took every inch of high ground and advantage he could find. Rhys asks Cassian how long he thinks that they actually have to make it. How long does he think they can last against this army in this position? Cassian says we have 5 High Lords and there's only one of him. All of them could shield us for a while, but it might not be in our interest to every one of you like that. He'll have shields too, and the cauldron. He's been careful not to let us see the full extent of his power, so I have no doubt that we're about to. And so Cassian ends by saying, let's say it goes badly, shields shatter, disarray happens, he uses the cauldron. A few hours at most is how long their whole army has to stay alive. Like worst case scenario, a couple of hours and they'll all be dead. So they've decided that those who are made, Feyre, Nesda, Elaine, and Amren, are going to cross the battlefield on foot because that's the only way for them to get to the cauldron. They're going to have to wait until the battle is in full swing, until it starts to get messy, and they're able to make it across the battlefield without being noticed because of the battle raging around them. That Rhys can't go with them because if Hybern still has a lock on his power, then Hybern is going to see he's going to know. He's going to know that they're coming. So it has to be just Amren with Feyre and her sister. Then we have both armies kind of stepping up to the line to fight against each other. Amren and all of them are back at this time. It's actually the other High Lords who are going to be leading the army initially. Rhys is up with Feyre and everybody else. And so Amren kind of explains step by step what's going to happen. So first thing is magic. Everyone's going to use magic first. Both sides will try to bring down the shields around their army. And so all of the High Lords except Rhysand put up a shield. Then multiple siphon shields from the Illyrians go up as well. And both sides try to shoot out some power to bring down the shields for the enemy. And Amren says, I forgot how boring this part is. Rhys just shoots her a dry look, like really, everyone's about to die, and you're upset because it's taking a little bit longer to get started. And then Rhys shoots out his power after the other High Lords bring Hybern's shield down. He delivering a mighty, devastating blow to the army the moment their shield buckled, a veritable tidal wave of night-kissed power. Before all of the shields come down and everybody shoots their initial blows, Feyre is kind of taunting, teasing Rhysand a little bit. Says, I've been thinking a lot about what to get you as a mating present, but I wasn't sure, so I've been thinking a lot about it. And then I finally discovered what I wanted. And she shows him a picture of a tattoo, a new tattoo down her spine that is from the nape of her neck. And it has the 4 phases of the moon and a small star in the middle of it. And then she says, and I'll admit this mating gift is more for both of us. And then she reveals both Bryaxis and the bone carver on the battlefield in front of their army. So she was able to get both of them chained to a body or something similar to it and got them to fight for them. She mentions that the bone carver had chosen the form of an Illyrian soldier in his pride, which is an interesting form for him to choose. Maybe he just wanted to fit in with the other Illyrian warrior. Maybe not. Who knows? And then Bryaxis remained within a darkness, like a cloud of darkness, because Bryaxis doesn't actually have a shot. Oh, that's when she talks about when she saw herself in the mirror. Rhys then says, so you did get the Ouroboros. What did you see in the mirror? And Feyre says, myself. She does say perhaps it was the one thing I would never show him. That's not true because she's going to paint it in in a couple of books. But initially, she says it might be the one thing that she would never show him, but that she loved it, forgave it, all of it, and that she could allow it to break her, all of the bad in herself. Only she could own it, embrace it. And once she'd learned that, that's when the Ouroboros had yielded to her. And Rhys questions her, "You loved all of it, the good and the bad." And she says, "Yes, especially the bad." And she says, "Here's a long, happy mating, Rhys." And he says, "Well, it seems you beat me to it." And she says, "To what?" And he's like, "The big reveal," because then he revealed Striga, the Weaver, also on the battlefield, ready to fight for them. This is when we find out that Helion was in the Weaver's Wood when he found Feyre after the Suriel was killed. He was in that wood because Rhysand had sent him there to bargain with the Weaver about coming to help fight for Prythian. So that's why Helion was in the woods to begin with when he found her. To see if he could break the containment spell on the Weaver in exchange for her services today. So Rhys says, "Here's to family reunions," because the Carver and the Weaver are siblings. Which I just said the Carver and the Weaver in the same sentence, and now I'm like, well, if they're the Carver and the Weaver, what does that make the other brother? Because he carves death, she weaves death into tapestry, like a tapestry of fate. So what does the other brother do? That's interesting. We'll put a pin in that.
Yeah, wait, aren't there 3 in mythology? Yeah. I can't remember what all 3 do, but I feel like they're similar with what you just said.
Wait. 3 what?
Because you
The
have death, you have
sisters.
the fate. There's 3 fates,
the
but I'm
Fae fate.
thinking because we have the Carver death, the Weaver
He carves
fate.
death.
So
She
what would be
weaves
the
death.
third?
That's what I mean. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what all 3 do. I don't remember.
Carver, Weaver.
Okay, the Fates are 3 ancient goddesses in Greek mythology who determined the destiny, lifespan, and ultimate death of every mortal.
Oh, okay. So then if Carver's death, and if you plug the Weaver in as being...
Do you see the name of the spinner?
What is it?
No. So I just Googled it. So one of them's name is Clotho.
No way.
Uh-huh.
We have a Clotho already.
Yeah.
But she's a priestess.
Yeah. I just thought that was funny. So one that spins the thread of life, one that weaves, which is the Clotho, and the one that determines its length. With Atropos. Oh wait, no, that's... Yeah, no, hold on. One that cuts it.
Yeah, Clotho would be the spinner, so that would be the weaver.
Mm-hmm.
And then Atropos, the inflexible, she's responsible for choosing the manner and exact time of death. So that would be the carver, carving the actual death. So then the third death god in ACOWAR would be Coast. He would be the measurer or a lotter that measured the length of the lifespan, deciding how long a person would live. So she represents the future. So the weaver, the spinner, represents the present. Then the one who ends the death represents the past. And the third one represents the future, which the future one we haven't gotten yet. So at that point, the battle happened. The 3 immortals slam into Hybern's line, and the screaming begins. That point, the shields have come down. Rhys lets out a large amount of power. And it's interesting that he says obsidian power erupted from him, when we literally just talked about Truth Teller being an obsidian blade. And a chunk of Hybern's army just missed it, turned into red mist and metal shaving. And then Azrael unleashes a second blast, blue light slamming into the now exposed flank, driving them even further apart. Bryaxis is just a blur of ever-changing claws and fangs and wings and muscles, shifting and whirling within that dark cloud. It's struck and smothered, and blood sprays everywhere. Neither the Bone Carver nor Bryaxis is actually fighting with weapons other than the Carver does have a scimitar of ivory or of bone, which we just talked about him being the symbol of death, and the Grim Reaper always carries a scimitar.
The way they say it too, threshing wheat.
Right.
You know me and the graphic scenes and stuff. I'm over here. Yeah, this whole part
it
because
it just tells us more that this is the death god.
Yeah.
Rhys tells them they can't go yet. They need Hybern's army focused elsewhere. And that included having Rhys actually step onto the battle. Amren is pushing to go because they need to get there before the battle even ends. And with how quickly things are happening, it's just moving a little bit faster. But before they can start going, a horn sounds to the north. Okay, so both armies pause because they have heard a horn from the north. And over the hill comes 3 additional armies, one bearing the burnt orange flag of Baron in the Autumn Court, one with the grass green flag of the Spring Court and Tamlin, and the other one bearing mortal men in iron army, bearing a cobalt flag and a striking badger, which is Grayson's crown. So okay, let me pause because sorry, Kate. Sorry. The literally next sentence is out of a rip in the world, Eris appeared on top of our knoll. Anytime Farah describes somebody winnowing, she says they appeared. They were over there and then all of a sudden they were here. But she specifically uses these words when Eris winnows and she says out of a rip in the world. How is he ripping the world apart? I feel like the wording is different in this one. And now it makes me want to go back and actually look at every other time someone has winnowed. Because if I remember correctly, this is the only time that she's mentioned out of a rip in the world. But see, no, because even when they're on the frozen lake in the Winter Court and they're running away from Eris and his brothers, she said Eris winnowed 2.
She does, yeah.
Is it different or is she just describing it differently? I don't know, but I feel like based on how often we hear a rip in the world, a tear in the world through these first 2 book series, Throne of Glass and ACOWAR, it just seems odd that she would describe Eris winnowing this time in this manner. It's odd to me. Anyway, so we have 3 armies, 1 human, and then the other 2 remaining courts that have finally come to help. Eris tells them that it is actually Tamlin who came and dragged Baron out by his neck. And Eris says it was the light. And Rhys's response is, so then what is your father doing? Eris says we're taking care of a problem. And then they can see that Eris's brothers are winnowing past the front line to get to all of the wagons scattered throughout Hybern's army. The wagons full of Fabane, and they use their fire magic from Autumn Court to blow up these wagons that Tamlin had told them exactly where they would, or Jurian, one of the 2. And so because they know that information, they're able to winnow and blow them all up. So at least for this battle, the Fabane has now been taken out, which is fantastic because they need every advantage they can find. So that's when Rhys tells Amren to go. You guys need to go now. The armies are distracted now that we have another section of armies that are coming in, more soldiers coming in. Hybern is going to splitting their attention between the initial army and now the new set of armies. So it is time for them to go. Rhys has also told the Weaver to clear a path. So the Weaver's goal is to get across the battlefield, clear a path up the cliffs, up to the mountain to wherever we think the cauldron is, so that it is easier for Amren and Farah and her sisters to get to the cauldron. So that the Weaver has slowly been moving her way across the battlefield. Or Amren asks, how does the Weaver even know how to find the cauldron? And Rhys says, she appears to have an unnaturally good sense of, crazy good sense of, which is very interesting. I mean, that's kind of how she smelled Farah being in her cabin the first time, but we'll see. We're going to put a pin in that one. And then Nesta takes a shuddering gasp and stumbles and actually falls down, takes Amren down with her. And that's when they realize that the King of Hybern is rousing the cauldron to use it for something. So they yell for shields to come back up. Eris winnows away to warn everybody else that they can put their shield. Nesta is scanning the horizon as if she can see right where the cauldron was now about to be unleashed. Rhys's power is and Azrael's are going out to try and put up a shield over their army. And then it's Nezda who begins screaming, not in pain, but a name over and over again, and she is screaming Cassian. He can hear, Feyre says, a figure shot from the Illyrian ranks, spearing for us, flapping hard, red siphons blazing, and then Nezda moans, writhing on the ground. The earth seemed to shudder in response, in terror of the thing that erupted from Hybern's arm, and that the cauldron let out a battering ram of death white light hurled for our army. Cassian is kind of halfway in between the Illyrian army that he was just with and coming back to Nezda when the cauldron's blast hits the Illyrian forces, and it just so happens to be right where Cassian just was. So Nezda screaming for him got him away from where the cauldron was going to blast. That it shreds through Azrael's shield and Rhysand's and all of the siphon-made ones of the Illyrians, and it does take out thousands of Illyrian soldiers, and now there are ashes raining. Cassian is just kind of dumbfounded, flapping in place, torn between coming to them versus charging back to the scattering Illyrian and Peregrine. And Feyre mentions that Rhys is looking at Nezda like he knew as well that she had just saved Cassian's life, and he isn't if he should scold her, because now Cassian is no doubt going to feel a ton of guilt because he was saved and the others were. She can tell on Rhys's face that he's not. If he should scold Nezda for what Cassian is going to feel later, or if he should thank her for saving his. And then the cauldron hits again, this time in the middle of its own army because he is trying to take out the bone carver. She mentions there is an unearthly female shriek broke from deep in Hybern's ranks, a sister's warning and pain. Just as that white light slammed into the carver, I could have sworn he looked toward me as the cauldron's power crashed into him, and I could have sworn he smiled, and it was not a hideous. She wonders if maybe he had known this was going to be his death, and the reason he wanted her to get the mirror was he wanted to know if she was worth dying for. And since she got the Ouroboros mirror, he decided that she wondered if he had actually carved his own death in the prison already, which presumably he already did. Nezda then tells them that it's gone quiet. Cassian has landed, wanting to know what they can do against that. Azrael says, I'm going in. Somebody needs to kind of reform the Illyrian line in the sky. He turns to Rhys and says, chain me to a tree, go ahead, I'll rip it out of the ground and I'll fly with it on my back. You're not going to stop me from fighting. And so Rhys finally can't tell him not to. So Azrael flies off to take care of the Illyrian. And so at this point now, Feyre has to get to the cauldron so that they can stop it before it refills to be able to knock out another large section of their arms. Or Feyre wants to know if Amren and Feyre can do it on their own. Nezda is on the ground. She is struggling. She can barely sit up because of everything that just happened with the cauldron. Elaine is on the ground, absolutely shuddering in terror. So neither one of them is really in a good place to be able to go with Feyre and Amren to nullify the cauldron. And Feyre is realizing that with Hybern's sheer size, that they were already starting to push the Prythian army back. That they were going to overwhelm them very soon. And she wondered, even once we get to the cauldron, if we can nullify or stop the army, who is going to be left at that point? And then another horn blasts. And this one is not a good one. This one is the other half of Hybern's army in armada form is now sailing into the coast so that Hybern's army can smash and crash them on both sides. And Amren's response is, we may need to run before they make landfall because there's no way we can fight both armies. Rhys tries to tell Feyre, if you can't get across the battlefield in time to nullify the army, then I need you to run. And I need you to go elsewhere and live so that you can fight another. And she says, no, you said no goodbyes. We're not doing that. We're going to go down together or not. And Feyre is realizing that all of their planning, everything extra that they have done, that it is still not enough. And then a third horn blasts across the world, and again, this one is good. A dozen lifted in perfect, mighty harmony. And Rhys knows. He knows the sound of this horn. He recognizes it. So he goes utterly still at the sound of those horns from the distance, from the east, from this sea. And so he grabs her and takes her up in the sky. Cassian grabs Nesta, flies her up into the sky, because there is a legion, thousands upon thousands of winged soldiers flying in with an armada of ships below them. More than Hybern's armada, far more than what Hybern has. This is the Seraphin Draken's Legion that Rhys kind of chokes on a laugh/cry as they're watching them kind of sail in and fly, and that was enough to tell Feyre who exactly this was, who was coming. And so Draken flies up to them and says, well, you could have asked for aid. You know we would have come. We didn't need to hear about this through the rumor mill. And it seems we just arrived in time. And Rhys says, we were looking for you, but we couldn't find you because you had gone. That's when Draken says, we realized that. Miriam put it all together. He says, we had some issues a couple centuries ago. We had to set up a glamour on our island so it looked like we had actually left, and it would push people to not approach. But we didn't realize that it had done such a good job that it also kept our friends away. So Rhys is like, so you've been on Cretea this entire time? And Draken's like, yes. No, Draken says, shall we assist you, or are we just going to flap here, stand here in the air talking? And Rhys says, well, at your leisure, Prince. And then he asks, friends of yours, in regards to the other armada that is sailing towards Hybern's armada. And he says, no, friends of yours, I think. Miriam's boats are down there and she's with them, but most of that came for you. And this is the part that had me crying when I was reading the other night, because Nesta's initial response is, what? Like, who on earth could this have been? Draken says, we met up with them on the flight here, saw them crossing the channel, and decided to join their ranks. It's why we're a little late, but we gave them a push across the sea. He says, I can't even begin to describe the convoluted story they told me, but they're led by a queen named Bath, who apparently was found, and at this point, Feyre is crying, and she's like, by Lucian, and he's like, oh, you mean the male with the eye? No, he's down there, but he didn't join them until much later. And then he told everybody where to go to come now. Actually, he's super pushy, those Prythian men, which is a good thing, I guess, because now they're actually here to help in this battle. And Nesta's like, well, then who found Vasa? Who is the one who got her army here? And Draken says he calls himself the Prince of Merchants. Apparently, he discovered the human queens were traitors months ago and has been gathering an independent human army to face Hybern ever since. He managed to find Queen Vasa, and together they rallied this army. He told me, oh gosh, I'm going to start crying. Someone else may have to read this part. Okay. He told me that he's got 3 daughters who live here and that he failed them for many years, but he would not fail them this. And he named his 3 personal ships after them. And the first, like the 3 main ships sailing across, are the Feyre, the Elaine, and then he is actually, the father, is sailing on Nesta's. I need to pause for this. Oh my gosh, that part gets me every time. And Katie's just laughing because she already cried. I'm over here all, I love my dad. So this is officially the Archeron father who has done all of this, orchestrated the entire thing, and he is now sailing in to save them with an armada of humans. Nesta, of course, is also crying at watching their father's ship come across the ocean. And she is specifically crying at the sight of the ship he'd chosen to sail into battle for the daughter who had hated him for not fighting for us, who had hated him for our mother dying, for the poverty and the despair and years lost. And Draken is like, well, I take it you know. Because both females are just sobbing in the air. And that's when Rhys says, well, meet Nesta, the actual and my mate, Feyre, also actual person, not a. And then Rhys does ask about Vasa and her curse. Is it ended? Draken said, see for yourself. We do find out that the curse isn't actually ended. We're going to find that out in the next episode in a couple of chapters, that she has just been given this time to come and fight, but she is going to have to go back to the lake and Koschei at some point. But she is a firebird because it is daytime, so she is a firebird right now. And Feyre mentions spearing for Hybern was a red and gold and white, vibrant as molten metal. Firebird, burning as hot and furious as the heart of a forge. So this is Vasa, the Lost Queen. Rhys tells Draken, get your legion on land. We got to get back to the fighting. And Feyre realizes a slim chance, a fool's chance in winning this thing. That is what they have brought us. So now Feyre has to go and do her thing with the cauldron to solidify them winning this. Before they leave, Draken does say Miriam's furious with you, by the way. 350 years since you last visited. If we survive, expect to do some gruff. And Rhys says, tell that witch it goes both ways. I'm sorry, why is he calling her a witch? Like, is this just another name for the B word? Or is there a reason he is calling a half-human, half-fae woman who was reborn as a fae a makes me wonder. They land back down on the ground, and the chaos was complete with the battle raging in every direction. So Feyre and Amren are about to go across. Nesda says, wait, use us as bait, because Nesda knows anywhere the cauldron is, the king is going to be there as well. They need to draw the king away, because if they don't, then Feyre and Amren are going to pop up where the cauldron is, and the king's going to kill them. So Nessa says it goes both ways. I can feel when he is using the cauldron, which means he's going to be able to feel if I try to use my power. He doesn't know how much I took. So if I make it look like I'm about to use my power on his army, like he just used the cauldron on our army, then he will come running just to kill me. And Cassian's response is he will kill you. And then she says, that's where you come in. You will guard me, protect me. Rhys says, no. And Nessa says, well, you're not my high lord. She pulls a favor, says, you are not my high lord. I may do as I wish. And since he'll sense that you are with me, you need to go far away. Rhys says, I'm not letting you throw your life away for this. And Cassian says, Az has control of the Illyrian lines. I'm going to go with Nessa. If this is the only shot we have at a diversion, luring him away from the call. He says, you gave everything already. You went through heck for us for 50 years. You think we don't know what happened? We all know everything that you went through under the mountain and with Amarantha, and that you did it to spare us and save us. Let us return the favor. Let us repay the debt. And Rhys says, there is no debt to repay. So Cassian says, I never got to repay your mother for her kind. Let me do it this way. Buy you time. Rhys says, I can't. Cassian says, you can. Save some of the glory for the rest. Nesta says Amon has showed her a need what to do to rally the power to her. So that is going to be good enough. That'll have to be good enough. Nesda then turns to Elaine and says quietly, tell father thank. And so she and Cassian then go off to a secluded area in the woods to try and lure the king of Hybern. Feyre tells Rhys he might survive. They both might survive. Rhys says no, he won't. Then Rhys moves Elaine to the farthest reaches of the camp so that she is as far away from battle as possible. Amren turns to Feyre and says, shield us from sight and run as fast as you can. Don't stop. Try not to kill because it'll leave a trail. And don't look. The Weaver had done a really good job killing key guards and posts and like guard posts that are now a little more than wet piles of bone and sinew. Amren's power flares again and again as she's breaking through all of the wards that the king has. Feyre mentions as they pass multiple commanders that although Prythian and all of its high lords and commanders are fighting with everybody, Hybern actually has most of their commanders up here waiting for most of the bloodshed to be done so that they can kind of pick off whoever is left. And they're talking about which high lords or which people they want to meet on the battlefield. Helion and Tarquin being two of the most frequent wishes, Tamlin being the other, and then as well as Jurian, and then obviously the rest of the high lords, Vivian, Mor, Azriel, Cassian, all the usual suspects are who they want to kill. And Farah does mention that Mor and Vivian were both fighting together, as well as that white-haired female that might be sisters to Vivian. We don't know, but she mentions all three of them are fighting together. And then Farah and Amren actually end up climbing part of the cliff face to get up to where the cauldron is. That as they're doing that, they can feel power rising, but it's not coming from the cauldron, it's coming from behind. So this is Nessa's power, that she is rallying it or pulling it up in her. And that's when they notice the King of Hybern actually walk past, very close to where they are, but they are hidden from him. And he actually comes out, and Strigga, the weaver, is in his path. He pauses to say, "How beautiful you are, how magnificent, ancient one." And she says, "You may bow, king, as you once did, or as it was once." And then the King of Hybern actually walks down, snaps her neck. And Vera mentions if it had only been a snapping of her neck, she probably could have come back from that. But then he takes her body and throws it down to a couple of the Naga hounds, and they tear her apart. So Strigga, the weaver, is most likely dead. And then the king started staring northward towards Nesda. Then he gazes towards the battle raging there. I could have sworn he was smiling as he winnowed away. So we're going to find out in the next set of chapters, in the next episode, why he's smiling before he goes to Nesta. Yeah, not a happy. Amren and Farah then get up to go to the cauldron to do their spell, and Farah's having a hard time moving because she knows that Nessa is now facing down the king, or very soon will be. And Amren says, "You need to make this count, because this is the slim window that she has bought us, and you need to make it that you can stop this right now, stop the army and the king before she gets to Cassian and Nesta, but she has to move quickly." So Amren tells her to put her hand on the cauldron, and Farah mentions the cauldron's endless power slammed into me, a wave threatening to sweep me under, a storm with no end. I clung to what I had seen in the Ouroboros, which I think is super interesting, that she clings to all of what she saw for herself, that she clung to every reflection and memory I had faced and owned, the good and the wicked and the great, who I was. She clings to that. Amren watched me for a long moment and did not read from the book, did not put it in my hands. She shut the gold pages and shoved it behind her with a kick. And that's when Farah realizes that Amren had lied. She did not plan to leash the king and his army with the cauldron or the. She had set a trap, and Farah had fallen right into. And that's where we're going to stop for this episode. We are going to get into what happens, what Amren lied about, what her true goals are, what is going on with the King of Hybern, where is Rhys, our beloved Rhys, in all of this, what is he doing, and some other terrible and awesome. All in the next episode. Really hard to stop right there in the middle of this crazy epic battle, but we're going to do it. Anything that we want to chat about before?
This was the worst chapter to end on. I was so frustrated last night. So frustrated. But it's worth it.
Sorry, guys.
Okay, whatever, Kay. What? We'll hold most of it for the end of the book and the end of next episode, because it's going to be a
very well. By the cauldron, we ended with Farah by the cauldron, so that's where we'll pick up next time. But from some self-discovery to self-sacrifice and a whole lot of tears on both sides. We're that much closer to the finale. So if you haven't read it yet, catch up and just read it, okay? You're not going to be able to stop, just like the rest of us. And we'll catch you all next time. Don't forget, like, comment, share your theories, subscribe, all the fun things, and we'll get back to you guys next. Bye.